Moving on to create WBS. I think I already mentioned you what WBS means. WBS is work breakdown structure. So this is also an important point for your exam. This is nothing but the process of subdividing the tasks and make it easier to manage. Expected outputs, scope baseline, and project document update. Project document update, I think it is all well known to us. Scope baseline. What is scope baseline? This is an approved version of scope statement. I think I already mentioned baseline means approval. So we have a scope plan, we have a scope baseline. That means approved scope plan. So in the scope baseline, we have an approved version of scope statement. And the components of this scope baseline could be the project scope statement, unapproved stage. We have the WBS, the work breakdown structure. The final work breakdown structure will be the result of this. The work package or the planning package. And also, when I said WBS, we also have WBS dictionary. The dictionary contains, description of work, assumptions, or acceptance criteria, all those things. Okay, moving on to the inputs. What do we have for inputs? I think all these inputs are already known. We have project management plan, of course, project documents, and again, the repeated enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. So I think by now you are already aware that how important these input number 3 and input number 4 are. Moving on to the tools. Again, we have expert judgment and decomposition. Okay, this is something new. What is decomposition? Decomposition is actually, I think, the definition of work breakdown structure. So there are some simple techniques to divide the tasks. When I keep saying techniques, don't worry about all these things because you don't know what these techniques are. It's nothing but you have a bigger work, you have divided into 3 parts, and then these 3 parts you have divided into 3 subparts again. So how do we divide it? It can be done phase wise. So that is one method, or it can be divided on work wise, right? Major deliverables, like example, testing. We have a huge testing task. We divide it into 2 small testings or 3 small testing works, right? So these are the decomposition techniques. You just remember that there are 2 of them: phase wise decomposition or major work wise or major deliverable wise decomposition. Moving on, validate the scope. Validating scope is nothing but we have to make sure that the deliverables are met. We have an acceptance from the customer and other stakeholder, and that's important, right? You have to get an approval from sponsor also. Outputs is, of course, the accepted deliverables from the sponsor, from the customer, from all the relevant stakeholders. We need work performance information. I think we learned this before. We have change requests closure. All the change requests have to be closed, not approved. We have the project documents to be updated at the end of this process. What do we have for inputs? The project management plan, of course, the project documents, of course. What project documents could be acting as input here? You could use quality reports, you could use lessons learned, you could use requirements documentation. You can use all this as inputs in the project documents part. Of course, the verified deliverables act as an input here, and work performance data. I think we have covered all these inputs in the previous talks. Validating the scope, we have to inspect all these inputs, and inspection methods are to be learned. And the decision making, because to validate whether the deliverables have actually been met or not, the decision has to be done. And who has to take this decision? At what time this decision should be taken? Can this be taken at the beginning of the project? It cannot be, right? Because we have to actually validate these things. So first inspection and then the decision making. Who has to done it? When we have to do it? What is the frequency of these reviews? All these things come under the techniques of validating the scope. Control scope. Okay, so here it's nothing but making sure all the change requests or the actions that we have taken. When I say actions, it could be corrective actions, it could be preventive actions, whether all these things are processed or not, that we will understand. What do we have here for outputs? We have work performance information. We have learned that before. We have change requests as outputs. We have learned that before. We have project management plan updates. What project management plan diagrams or what documents can be updated here? You can imagine scope plan. You can imagine the scope baseline being updated after the process. The schedule baseline. Basically, all the baselines are updated after this task. And then moving on, we have project document updates. Again, what documents? If we speak, go to the specific, we have lessons learned to be updated. We have requirements documents to be updated. We have requirements traceability matrix to be updated. At this stage, we'll understand what is the status of each requirement. So the traceability matrix of the requirement also is updated at this stage. What do we have as inputs? Project management plan, of course. Again, when we keep on repeating project management plan, it is again a conglomeration, or it is a gathering of all the small management plans. Let's say scope management plan, requirement management plan. All these smaller management plans together, they act as inputs. The project documents, again, if you go to the specifics, we have lessons learned, requirements documentation, all these act as inputs to us. We have work performance data and organizational process assets. Okay, we have only one tool to discuss here, that is the data analysis. At this stage, control scope stage, we have two different data analysis methods. First thing is the variance analysis, and second thing is the trend analysis. As the session is recorded, you will understand these processes again. So you have hints for what to learn and what not to learn. So just know for control scope, we have two data analysis, variance analysis and trend analysis. When we say variance analysis, what it does, it compares the baseline versus actual, right? What is approved and what is right now, what is the actual result. So the effectiveness of this corrective action, preventive action, everything is done in this variance analysis. And when we talk about the trend analysis, I think we have already spoken about this trend analysis, but still I'll repeat it. It means we have to examine the project performance over the time, right? So at one point of time, what is this project performance, whether it is getting improved, whether it is getting deteriorated, right? So all these things come under this data analysis of controlling the scope.